Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. So if you saw a few weeks ago, I got my first Open Gate quilt box, and it came with two projects to complete: the mini mat holder and this one, the log cabin star. So in this video, I'm going to work through the log cabin star quilt. It's about wall hanging size, or you could use it as a table topper or something like that. So let's get started on this project. Okay, so when I work through any quilt project, I really like to read through the entire pattern first. It just helps you get acquainted with it, know what you're going to be doing. And that way also, if you have a preferred way of doing things, like say flying geese or half square triangles, then you can kind of accommodate the pattern to fit how you like to do things if you read through it first. So this is the quilt that we're going to be making. I love that it comes with an actual picture of it, so you can kind of really see how it's going to come together. And the kit also came with all of the fabric aside from the backing fabric. So what I'm going to do first after reading the pattern is press all of these. I'm going to starch them to press them, and then I'm going to sort them in the order that the pattern shows cutting it. Now I'm not going to discuss the pattern dimensions, the cut sizes, or anything like that, just to protect the designer of this pattern. I'm just going to more show the process of making it, talk about how easy the pattern was and things like that, just for people who are interested in purchasing a pattern maybe from Open Gate, or interested in the box, just to kind of get an idea of the difficulty of the patterns, if it's something that they might be able to do themselves. So I'm going to separate the patterns, the fabric, in the order that the pattern shows to cut them. And I like to do that because when I work through it, after I make each cut, I like to kind of mark off on the pattern that I completed that one, so I don't actually do the same cut twice or anything like that. So the first thing I'm going to be cutting is the background fabric. And so I noticed in the pattern that what it does, and it's my preferred way of cutting fabric, is it'll tell me to first cut a strip from it. So and it also tells you the width that it's going to be cut. That way you know if you're going to be cutting it this way or this way. And so I think that's really nice, and it makes it really easy to know that you're doing the cuts right, because sometimes a pattern will just say cut 4 strips at this width, and then you're not sure if you're cutting it across you know, the 42 to 44 inch side of the fabric, or you know, the shorter side across the selvage. You know, hopefully it's not across that side, because you're you know, but anyway, with that said, so it tells me to cut the strip, and then it'll tell you what cuts to make from that strip that you made. So that's how I'm going to work through the pattern cuts. I'll show a little bit of the cutting, not a lot, because like I said, I don't want to give away all of the dimensions for the pieces, because this is a pattern that you get in your box, and I don't want to give away this person's work that they put into developing this pattern. So I'm going to press all these. I'll show a little bit of the cutting, and then we'll dive into piecing this pattern together. Okay, so here are all the pieces cut. It's quite a bit of pieces, and I think it was fairly easy to cut. I showed one instance where I ran into a little bit of a snafu when I was cutting this one, and if you watch the cutting, you could see that I had enough left over from the largest strip to adjust. So just be aware of your cutting, but it was easily to adjust the pieces and get it cut. So now on to piecing. Okay, so now that I have all the pieces cut, what I like to do is organize them all in how I'm going to sew them per the pattern. And according to the pattern, the first thing we are going to do is make this decorative star center block. So I have all the pieces together for that to sew together. And now what I'm going to do first is work on the center block, which is essentially kind of a square in the square block. So I have this larger square, and I'm going to sew along the diagonal of two sides. And then once those are sewed, I'm going to trim them, press them, and then sew the next two along there. Now you can use a marking pencil and draw a diagonal. I used to prefer that method, and you've heard me say it before in my videos that I prefer to just draw them on. It does take a lot more time, but it's how I felt comfortable. If that's how you feel comfortable, do that. I did get some diagonal seam tape in my, I believe it was my Countdown to Christmas box from the Missouri Star Quilt Company. I was really uncomfortable using it at first. I finally decided to try using it, and I love it. It's so much faster, and it saves me time on marking all of these blocks. So if you look in the description of this video, I have a link to my Amazon affiliate, and I do have the diagonal seam tape in my shop there if you want to give it a try. It has saved me a lot of time. So that is the center block. So it's the block you see here. So I'm going to set that to the side. And then basically we have a bunch of half square triangles and flying geese. So we have some that are on the bigger rectangle is the blue fabric. And then we'll just be sewing along the diagonal on the background. And then we have some rectangles that are background, and then we'll be sewing along the diagonal on those. And again, I'm not going to mark them. I'm just going to use my diagonal seam tape. And then we also have some half square triangles that we're going to make. So we're putting right sides together of our background in a red. And in this instance, if you're marking along the center, you're going to sew 1/4 inch on each side of that marking. I again can use my diagonal seam tape to do that. It just saves me some time. So I'm going to get these sewed, and then I will press them, and then we'll take a look at how it assembles. It looks like it's fairly straightforward. The pattern has a ton of great diagrams to help you make sure you're doing everything correctly. It also tells you along the way how many of each unit you'll need to make, like just one of the center and 4 of each flying geese. And then I believe we'll end up with 12 of these. There's 6 pairs, but once you cut them in half, you'll end up with 12 half square triangle units. So it's very, very straightforward. I've had no trouble understanding everything so far. So it has been a great pattern. So I'm going to get to sewing these. I'll show you a little bit of the sewing just so you can see a little bit of how the diagonal seam tape works. But then I'll just hop back on after I have everything pressed and show the assembly. Okay, so for the diagonal seam tape, for the half square triangles, I have right sides together. And then what we'll do is, you see I line up my foot, which is a 1/4 inch foot, which helps. I'm going to line that up with the side of my foot. And so I have the side of my foot lined right up on the edge of that. And then I have the tip of my block lined up with the black line on the tape. And this was the hardest part for me on doing these half square triangles. Was I used to just always watch the needle and make sure it was going, you know, along the line I drew or whatever. But when you're doing these, you're going to want to watch and make sure the point of your square is lined up with the 1/4 inch mark. So see, I watched and made sure it was lined up at the 1/4 inch mark, and that just makes a nice clean straight line. Now normally I would just chain piece all these on one side and get all of these done along that side, and then I would turn them and do the other side. But I just want to show you that you'll do the same thing. You'll line up your foot. If you have a 1/4 inch foot, it makes it a lot easier. But I line it right back up at the corner of the block, and then I make sure the other corner is lined up on that black 1/4 inch line, and then sew. And again, I was watching along the line and not the needle or the foot. And there you go. It's a 1/2 inch between the two, and then I will just cut along here. And then I have my clearly slotted perfect trimmers that I use to make sure the block is perfectly squared. And I'll show you those in a minute. So let me just show you how it's a little bit different with one of the other blocks, because this one is going to be very similar to the flying geese. So I have one of the blocks lined up in the corner and they're right sides together. And so in this instance, what I'll have is my needle lined up right at the corner, and instead of having the corner lined up at the black line, I want it lined up at the red, because that is the middle. And we're not sewing our line offset from the middle this time. We're wanting to sew it right down the middle for the flying geese and for this center unit. So I sewed along there, and then I'm going to sew along the opposite side, and that is what the instructions say as well. And we're doing this because we're going to want to trim first and press this open. Otherwise, if we don't have it pressed open, you'll see that we're going to sew across here and not be able to press this bottom block open because we'll have stitches across it. So it's very important to do the opposite sides first and press them, and then sew the next two sides on. And that's the same with the flying geese. I will finish all of them on one side, press them, and then finish the other side. Okay. So there we go, we have those sides done. So I'm going to set those aside, and I'll go ahead and finish all of my other blocks, and I'll show you trimming these down and then show the final layout. All right, so here is the center all pressed nicely, and then here are the two different flying geese, and they are going to get sewn together like this, kind of into an arrow formation. So I don't pin that often, but when I get longer stretches that I need to go across, I do typically put a pin or two just to make sure everything stays in place. So here I'm going to put it right at the seam. And something you could also do is sew with the point up so that you can make sure your stitches go right along where they cross, so that you get a nice crisp point on your block. So I'm going to pin all of those together to sew, And then we just have the half square triangles to work on. So here's the tool I was talking about, the Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer. In the set, you get two. So you get one that has your whole numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then you get another that is half inches, 1.5, 2.5, and so forth. So these need to get cut down to 3 inches. So I'm going to use the one that has the whole inches on it. So I'm going to cut it in half. And here you'll see that when you open it and press, you'll have these kind of ears sticking out the side, and that kind of like it makes it a little harder to line everything up nicely. So what this slotted trimmer does is not only easily trim the block down to the size you need, so the pattern gives the sizing. So I'm going to cut along here, and then the slots on the side trim off those dog ears. So there you go. So when you press it, those sides are gone, and then you'll also have the perfect sized half square triangle for the pattern you're using. I absolutely love these. They're in my shop on Amazon as well if you want to check them out. I use them all the time. So I'm going to get the rest of these trimmed, and then I'll organize them per the pattern. Set that to the side. Now, I do want to note that in the pattern, there are a lot of arrows that show which way to press. And this is very important because it'll help reduce a lot of your bulk at the seams. So it not only has it on the center block construction, but later on for the log cabin portion. So I have some of those already finished. So I have 3 of those finished, and they were really easy to put together following the diagram provided in the pattern. I followed all the pressing, and I don't have a lot of bulk for later quilting when I do that. So I definitely take note of all the arrows in the pressing. It'll help you along the way to make sure everything lines up nicely. So I'm going to finish trimming up these half square triangles, and then I will continue piecing all the rest of the quilt together. I'll show you the center portion when I get that all laid out as well. have my first project finished from the Open Gate Quilt box. So it's a subscription box that comes monthly. This was the June box. And the big project in this box is the log cabin star quilt. It is beautiful. It turned out amazing. Like, it is a really fun pattern and a fun project to complete. It came together really nicely. All the cuts were perfect. I was able to get some really nice points in this block, and the log cabin portion came together really nicely as well. All the colors look great together, and I really love that everything came in the box. Like, all of this fabric was in the box. I didn't have to get anything else, and even the binding is here to complete that portion. So I'm really happy with this. I really like how it turned out. The only thing I need to get is some batting and the backing for this project. I'm still deciding if I want to complete it as is, or if I want to see if I can get some more of this fabric and do 3 more of them and put it together and kind of have it as more of a throw size, or if I want to keep it like this for a wall hanging or a table topper. I'm not sure yet, but I really thought this was a well done project. So here's some of the fabric I have left. Not a lot. So you do need to be very precise with your cuts. I did show that some of it, I squared up the fabric a little too much, so I didn't quite have enough of one of the fabrics to cut as per the instructions, but I did have some left over in another strip where I was able to adjust and still get enough of the fabric. So I would just, you know, when you're cutting, just double check, make sure you're getting the right measurements. Don't square up too much. If you can just cut the fabric as is, then go ahead and do that. But I do think this is a very lovely box. I'm excited to get my next one. I'm excited to do the other project that I still have that came in this box, because it comes with a larger project and a smaller. So I still have the mini mat holder to do, which I will get done, and I'll share those photos as well. And also in this box, I got thread, a little mini mat to cut, and I still have some other fabric in the box to use on another project. So for the pricing, it's a great box. I highly recommend it. It was a lot of fun. So let me know what you think. Should I try to get some more of this fabric and make this project a little larger, or should I finish it as is at this size? I'd love to hear what you guys think. So hopefully you enjoyed this project, and until next time, you guys, bye.